this is the updated map of Syria. As you can see, everything turned green, which indicates that the opposition is now controlling all of the areas that were under Bashar al-Assad's control, even expanding them further to locations that are controlled by Syrian Democratic Forces that are backed by the United States towards the northern eastern part of Syria. The Syrian National Army, part of the opposition, is having clashes between the SDF in certain locations, and they are having successes. And we also have strikes from the Turkish Air Force. So we've had a report of Turkish military carrying out an airstrike on the countryside of Ain Isa and targeting SDF targets in Tawil and al-Hayr, in addition to other strikes in the area. Okay. Then we had the SNA, which is part of the opposition, attacking areas that are under control of the Syrian Democratic Forces. This is confirming that Turkey is taking a more proactive role now towards the eastern part of Syria. Previously, they were only focusing, they were backing the move by HTS to carry out this unprecedented campaign with very little bloodshed, to be fair, to control Syria and liberate Syria, with Bashar al-Assad fleeing, all of his forces fleeing. Now we have confirmations that he is in Russia, actually, including the areas of Latakia. Latakia was the last hub that they controlled, and then again, it was very easy for them to control with hardly any resistance from the Syrian government forces or the previous Bashar forces. Which leads us to Israel. We spoke about the Kurdish movements, and then we are going to talk about Israel here. Israel just took control of the Mount Hermon part that was used as a buffer zone. It is technically Syrian, but UN forces were deployed in this area. Israel's excuse was that because the Syrian army retreated, they didn't want any hostile forces to take control in that area. And they said, we won't allow any hostile side to establish themselves on our borders. However, it wasn't only that. Israel carried out over 50 strikes in Syria. In Al-Suwaida, the headquarters of the 9th Division, they targeted Inkhil Airport. They targeted an abandoned battalion area. But some of the most, and all of these are Israeli attacks, by the way, but the most significant attacks were one research location and significant air base when it comes to Syria. Now, Israel is carrying out all of these strikes in fear of some of these sites falling under the Syrian rebels, or a new Syrian kind of government now, or Syrian opposition in power. They, especially when it comes to the chemical weapons and when it comes to some of the air defenses. There were other reports that they notified Russia about some of these attacks, but not Turkey, because of the tensions, or at least public tensions, between them and Turkey following the genocide in Gaza. Now, simultaneously with these attacks, we're having a call coming from the Israelis for the minorities in Syria. Israel likes to use the minorities cards when it comes to Syria and other countries to divide and rule. And they've had a history of dealing with some of the Kurdish movements, and they are now calling on the Kurdish movements, primarily Syrian democratic forces that are backed officially by the United States, with U.S. presence in this area. As a matter of fact, the United States today, they threatened the HTS and SNA from attacking any part of Syrian democratic forces controlled territories inside of Syria, anything even towards the west of the Euphrates, so even these areas too, right? Because they're established primarily towards the east of the Euphrates River. Now, Israel is trying to establish a connection with them. And they are also trying to establish a connection between some of the ethnic minorities in South Syria. However, this has already been countered by HTS with their continued reassurances in Syria and with many ethnic minorities declaring and confirming that they are safe in Syria. No harm has been done to them. But the plan generally, and that would be a success when it comes to Israel and the countries that support Israel really, is for Syria to have a bloodbath. That's something we haven't seen. In the past 11 days, we have seen a military campaign from the Syrian opposition, a retreat from the Assad forces, and that's it, a transition of power. They are now present in Damascus. Ahmad al-Shara al-Jolani, leading the HTS, had a speech in Damascus, and he also spoke with the serving Syrian prime minister. The Syrian prime minister said, we received communication and assurances from HTS, and during his speech in Damascus, al-Jolani said, we warn people and we tell our fighters, basically, do not touch anything that belongs to the institutions of the state, because they belong to the people, and we want to protect all of the belongings of the people. And they're sending more reinforcements to the capital to ensure everything is safe. But they also spoke with the Syrian prime minister that was under Assad. He said, the Syrian prime minister, that him, alongside many other ministers, are still there in their positions, and they are looking to work with anyone that the Syrian people want, clearly showing a high level of diplomacy and openness and pragmatism from both sides, really, which would only serve the Syrian people. The last thing the Syrian people need is instability. And that's the thing that HTS are trying to do with the Kurdish movements too. But you have Israel. You have Israel who's looking for something else. Israel is looking to build alliances. They are an expansionist mass terror entity, and they would have indeed interest in going to Syria. Now, in Israel, there is a level of worry. Firstly, there is publicly a sense of relief, publicly, that, Assad is fallen. Assad was a link between Lebanon and Iran, although there were also contradictory statements coming from Israel about Assad himself, saying that no, he actually was someone who was stable, even though we don't like him, because the Golan borders were protected from the 70s up until now. Now Israel is taking action in the Golan Heights and having more reinforcement. Why is that? It's because they're worried from what's happening. As a matter of fact, they are also calling the HTS leader a wolf in sheep's clothing. A wolf in sheep's clothing, the crazy leader who took over Syria. This was a main headline in the Israeli newspaper Ma'arif. And they're also saying that he has a historical feud with Israel because the nickname, or his kunya al-Julani, refers to the Golan Heights, where his parents were expelled from in 1967 when Israel occupied the Golan Heights. And in secret meetings, he said previously that they want to liberate the Golan Heights, but he hasn't made it public, not to have any kind of open confrontation with Israel now. And they are worried about this. They're saying, we have the threat of Iran going, but now we have like another Islamic threat going on when it comes to Syria. So they're worried, but they are carrying out these airstrikes in Syria simultaneously with Turkey. What does that say? Well, that says that Turkey and Israel are the main players in Syria that are looking to have their interests. So you have Israeli airstrikes, although Israel, with their control on the Mount Hermon, that was controlled by the United Nations but belonging to the Syrian side, they said that this move is temporary up until there is a stable government. And they're trying to send reassurances. But, Israel, you're not going to believe them. The biggest player, apart from, of course, the Syrian people and the Syrian armed groups that carried out this operation, is Turkey. Now, this could indicate that we are witnessing the beginning or early days of a potential confrontation coming between Turkey and Israel. You're talking about regime change. You're talking about two countries that have hostilities between them. And now, technically, with allied people in power in Syria, you're talking about borders too. So if these groups in Syria, the rebel groups, the opposition who are now in control, they were, of course, backed by Turkey, and there is Turkish presence in Syria. That means you're talking about potentially Turkish presence in other parts too, alongside Israel occupying Mount Hermon. Now, this could lead to things escalating further. But the first phases, because we're going to see multiple phases now in Syria, the first phase is to stabilize everything to do with national institutions, make sure everything's functioning properly. We're already seeing elements of that in the northern parts or the previous parts that were under the Assad government that the opposition took control of. Now it's about the SDF, the Syrian Democratic Forces that are backed by the US. Turkey is trying to send a sign by these attacks, alongside attacks coming from the Syrian National Army that belongs to the opposition against SDF positions, alongside talks of diplomacy. Let's reach a resolution. There were previous positive statements coming from Kurdish elements that is so long, because they were celebrating the fall of Bashar al-Assad after all of these years of authoritarianism, and thousands of people are being freed from prisons now. Some of them thought that it was Saddam liberating them. It's been that long, and they've been completely banned from seeing anyone for a very long time. So now they are trying to have this deal alongside an Israeli attempt to build an alliance. Israel is, of course, going to try and play on the minorities thing by having a coalition with some of these Kurdish movements inside of Syria. But the way things are going so far have been to the favor of the Syrian opposition. A massive campaign, not hardly any bloodshed, civilians completely out of the picture. As a matter of fact, they protected the previous Assad forces, who just simply said, we're not going to fight, said everyone who doesn't fight is secure and safe. You can simply return to your homes. And now they even have Latakia under their control. So all that's remaining is to have a solution with the eastern part. So there must be talks, and you should have something that they agree upon for the future united Syria, right? There are, of course, talks about, a federal state potentially, or some sort of further powers to some provinces. That might be a solution. However, all of them need to be under a central government. If that is dealt with, if that situation is dealt with the SDF, the main group in the eastern part of Syria that is officially backed by the United States. I mean, the United States is warning Turkey, SDF, and the no, they're warning Turkey, not the SDF. They're warning Turkey, HTS, and the SNA, Syrian National Army, from conducting attacks on the primarily Kurdish movements in East Syria, because some of them have, other tribes too. If they reach a solution with them, then they've secured everything to confront the Israeli threats. If they don't, that would be something that would work in favor of Israel, because they, alongside the US administration, would be able to capitalize on the situation and have a longer kind of transition period, because so far it has been very evident that things have gone quick. Assad fled, his regime collapsed completely. Of course, Iran withdrew, Hezbollah withdrew. They're now talking as if, that's it. It's a new phase now. And clearly there have been some sort of reassurances or negotiations in the background. There have been reports about secret meetings between HTS and Iran too. And that's why where we're at the moment. But things, of course, are evolving by the minute. So there is a crucial importance to reach a solution with the primarily Kurdish movements in the eastern part of Syria. If we reach that situation, then we could potentially face either a de-escalation, because there is the probability of any new government in Syria having like any sort of like a peace process with Israel or anything of the sort is beyond comprehension, really. And Israel is not even expecting that. What Israel is worried about is a hostile entity replacing Assad, who, well, they declared that they didn't like, that would threaten them with action being taken. That's why they are deploying more and more forces to the Golan Heights now. However, things are evolving, and of course the situation is becoming more clear by the day, by the minute. And in the meantime, these were the main things that I want to talk to you about, and I will see you soon in the next video. Peace, everyone.